悪い狼さん倒そう。捕まったりしない。一緒に絵本を読もう。友達を守って。お祭りが始まったみたい。本がドーン。小さな鳥と秘密の花園に行こう。そこではみんな幸せに暮らしましたとさ。悪い小さな鳥と秘密の花園に行こう。うちにもちゃんと見てなさい。一緒に絵本を読もう。悪いお友達を守って。うちのバットうちにバットうちのバットクライマックスです。元気が出ましたか。捕まって祭りが始まったみたい。悪いお友達を守って。友達を守って。皆さん遅すぎた後悔より。負けません。そこではみんな幸せに暮らしましたとさ。
Hey guys, Misery here, back with another CZN video. And in today's video, we just got news and information on what Adelheid does in her kit in the latest dev livestream before CZN. So Adelheid has this new mechanic and new effect called Blessing. When you have a certain amount of shield, if it is lower than 30% of max HP, the card with the Blessing effect, if it's moved from hand to graveyard, you'll get 60% shield. Adelheid can apply this Blessing effect to a lot of cards, so you can proc this a lot of times for a lot of shield. You'll see later on, you'll be able to apply Blessing on like upwards of 4 cards, if not more, very easily with her epiphanies. But yeah, Adelheid is going to be the newest and latest unit coming to CZN. She is a Void Vanguard. Very surprising, because like none of us really like imagined her being a Vanguard, because when you think of Vanguard, you think of like Felipe, Magna, 9, like you don't think of a little child like Adelheid. But yeah, that's her like main mechanic and gimmick in her kit. She mainly just has this Blessing effect. She does have a shield retention new effect later on we'll get into, but we don't need to worry about that right now. We just need to worry about the Blessing. But yeah, you basically just apply and create Blessing cards. It can go on any card. Adelheid can apply these blessings to any card, whether it be Haida Marie's, Kairon, Diana, Renoa, she can apply to anyone. And she does have a discard mechanic in some of her epiphanies, making her a good support for, discard units such as Haida Marie, Diana, and Renoa. But you don't always have to use the card with the Blessing effect. If you draw a Blessing card, you'll gain shield through that also. And then you can increase damage amount that, you do and the enemy takes. Through one of her cards, it does apply a debuff on the enemy that makes them take plus 100% damage. So, that's pretty good. That's going to be like really good for units that spam a lot, whether it be like Luke, Renoa, Diana, even Haida Marie, because I'm pretty sure that's for the entire turn. I don't think it's just for one card. So if you're spamming like 20 bullets a turn with Luke, that's going to be really good. But yeah, Adelheid is going to provide a lot of sustain with her shielding. She can even heal with her ego skill. We'll get into that later on, but very surprising because like she's like more of like a shielder unit. I imagine she's going to be really good for sortie, and the devs are probably going to shield her for sortie specifically. But yeah, those are some of her like main mechanics and how she works, how you want to play her. Getting into her basic and her creation cards. So first off, we have this gather round card, 120% defense based damage. It does have Blessing on it, but you're probably going to be removing this because it doesn't seem that high value. Same with her Fairy's Protection basic card, Blessing also 126% shield. This may be good in sortie, but I don't really see you keeping this for save data content. And then onto her creation cards. She has these creation cards called Doggy and Teddy. So Doggy, just like the base version, haste and blessing effects, 72% defense based damage times 4. So that's going to do 288% defense based damage just off of one doggy. And with some of her epiphanies, you can create a bunch of doggies. So Adelheid DPS, I definitely can see it being a thing in the future, and people experimenting with that. And then regular base Teddy, haste and blessing, also just like doggy, 240% shield and 2 damage reduction. That is a ton of sustain and survivability, because 240% shield, that's already a big shield itself, but you're also getting damage reduction. So like you're going to be taking like very little damage when using Adelheid, whether it be in sortie or save data content. And then we also have some other versions of Doggy and Teddy. So Doggy has this pack version. This has Blessing, Linked, and Quietus, very familiar effects that Haida Marie has. Can be paired with some of her cards for some synergy, especially the Fulgent expansion that creates effulgent blades depending on how many linked cards are in hand. So, you know, I can definitely see that working there. But basically what doggy pack does, 240% defense based damage, increased damage amount by 50% for each doggy linked before activation. So, you know, like I said earlier, you can create a bunch of doggies and then you use this doggy pack and then you just do a bunch of damage with Adelheid. And then onto the doggy morphed version, just like the regular one, also has haste and blessing, but it does more defense based damage, also ×4, and when an attack card is activated, changes card to Teddy morph. So you can alternate between doggy and Teddy morphed depending on what cards you use, depending if you need like shield and survivability or you want to do damage. And then onto Teddy morphed, haste and blessing also, 360% shield, 3 damage reduction, and then, you know, just like doggy morphed, when a skill card is activated, changes card to doggy morph. So yeah, pretty nice survivability there with Teddy, and it's a 0 cost. Like you're doing like Calipe type of shields and Magna type of shields for 0 cost. So I think Adelheid is going to be like an insane sustain for Sortie itself, and you know, it's going to make like doing Sortie runs a lot easier. Depending on how much sustain she actually does, you might be able to even beat 30 out of 30 hardcore with like some units you may not have expected to beat it with, such as like Yuki or like Chizuru, Ren. The possibilities are endless. So, you know, we're gonna have to do a lot of testing with her once she comes out. And then getting onto her epiphanies, starting off with her first epiphany card, Once Upon a Time. Here's a list of all 5 epiphanies. I'm not gonna go through every single one of them. I'll go through a few of them though. So like this 5th one here, this upgrade one. When a card is created, apply blessing 5 times per turn. Units that create a lot of cards, such as like Luke, Diana, Renoa. You know, I've been saying their names so much in this video, but they just create a lot of cards and, you know, they spam a lot. Like, you know, units like that, you know, you're gonna be creating a ton of cards, and then you're gonna be able to take advantage of this upgrade Once Upon a Time, applying blessing to all those cards you're creating. She also does have some, you know, draw capability, not with this card specifically. I mean, there is a second one, but you know, later on we'll see some other cards that can be able to draw, but they do have a little bit of drawback. So, you know, Veronica is still on top for being the best support like draw wise in the game. Adelheid is not taking that throne. But yeah, like the second one here, select and draw 1 from draw pile, then apply blessing to those cards. So this is basically like a Joker from Cassius, or, you know, Haida Marie has that one hero to all epiphany where you can search out what card you want from the draw pile. I really like cards like that because, you know, you can just like target whatever card you need. This does have exhaust just like the Haida Marie one, but it also has initiation, which is very nice because straight out of the gate you can just get whatever card you want. And then onto this third Once Upon a Time. So like I said earlier, there is some discard synergy with Adelheid. You know, she's going to be able to discard 4 discard units, Haida Marie, Renoa, but also apply blessing to 3 random cards of the combatant who owns the discarded card. So you can apply blessing to a bunch of Haida Marie cards and maybe even her blades that are in the discard pile. And if you're using the sword ring that activates 5 that are in the discard pile for something maybe like the coordinated attack comp, you can just spam and spam and spam over and over, and proc can take advantage of all of those blessings. But yeah, that's her Once Upon a Time card. Moving on to her next card. Next we have Protect Us. So this is the card I was talking about earlier where she can draw, you know, this third one, draw 3, change cost of those cards to 0 to 2 for 1 turn. So it does have drawback. It's not just like a regular draw 3 that like Veronica has with her divines. So this can actually be really bad depending on your comp, because like say you have like units with a ton of 0 cost cards and then you use this Protect Us, draw 3, and then like you draw 0 cost cards and they go to 2. Yeah, that's not really going to be very good. And then this fourth one, draw 1. If that card is a blessing card, add 1 draw. This is 0 cost, so that's pretty nice. You don't got to spend AP for this, but you know, just straight off the bat, it's already draw neutral. And if you draw a blessing card, then it's +1. So you know, there is some draw power there for her to go draw positive in the card economy. And then onto this 5th Protect Us, draw 2 blessing cards of this unit, increase damage amount and shield gain amount of those cards by 60% for 1 turn. So you know, if you're going like something maybe like DPS Adelheid, it's gonna be really good, or even sustain Adelheid, it's gonna be good because you know you're gonna be doing more shielding and more damage. But yeah, that's her second card, Protect Us, and some of her epiphanies. Moving on to her third card, Friends from Fairy Tales. So this is an upgrade card. All of the epiphanies are upgrades, so you know this is gonna be like pretty nice. It's gonna thin the deck down and make it easier to cycle your entire 3 decks. But this is actually how you get the other versions of the creation cards. So like this third one, create 4 doggy pack and draw pile. This 5th one is gonna create the doggy morphed. So that's how you get those other versions of the creation cards. But I really see a ton of potential with this first Friends from Fairy Tales. Create 1 doggy plus 20% damage amount, 2 doggy for every 1 blessing card in possession, max 15 cards. So I can definitely see some people cooking up with this for DPS Adelheid and being able to dish out a ton of damage. And then this 4th Friends from Fairy Tale, create 1 Teddy when Teddy is used, and then 1 counterattack, and for 1 turn, retain counterattack. So you can actually counterattack with Adelheid if you want. A lot of people were thinking she was going to be a counterattack unit, which, you know, like she can gain counterattack through this, but you know, I wouldn't necessarily consider her a counterattack unit. You know, she has like 1 way to gain counterattack. But yeah, that's her card, Friends from Fairy Tales. Moving on to her last epiphany card, we have Truth Behind a Story. So this second one, G-Clef was actually mentioning on the dev livestream. This one's pretty good. Move 2 blessing cards from discard pile to hand. So I can definitely see some tech with this for, you know, maybe like Haida Marie being able to cycle and, you know, spam her discarded cards that were in the discard pile. But this third one is looking good too. Increase damage and shield gain amounts of Doggy and Teddy by 100% for 1 turn. So that's going to be doubling your damage amount and your shield gain on Doggy and Teddy, because that's a multiplicative 100%. That's not additive. And if you have a bunch of buffs for Doggy and Teddy through her other cards, this can be really good. Like I was saying earlier, she does have this debuff that you can apply to the enemy for them to take more damage. That's his first epiphany here, plus 100% damage amount taken by the target for 1 turn. That is additive, so that's basically kind of like 5 morale. It will be good for units that spam a lot, like I said earlier, Luke, Renoa, Diana, but yeah, that's her card Truth Behind a Story in her last epiphany card. And then her next card, Guardian of Secrets, the one that can't get an epiphany. So this is an upgrade, and this does have the new effect I was talking about earlier when I was talking about blessing, 25% shield retention, and then 240% shield. So the shield is pretty nice because that's a good amount of shield. But basically what shield retention does, at the end of the turn, retain shield equal to the current amount. When multiple instances exist, only the highest value is applied. So it's basically just like shield retain. You get to carry your shield over to the next turn, which is pretty nice because it sucks having a ton of shield and then you have to end turn and then you can't carry any of that over. So we have shield retention now, a new effect for us to carry the shield over to the next turn. And then moving on to her ego skill, Happy Ending, 300% shield, fixed heal equal to shield in possession, does not exceed a 30% of max HP. So like I was saying earlier, this is how you're going to heal with Adelheid. It is a one-time heal since it is an ego skill, but she does have healing in her kit if you do need healing instead of just shielding. But yeah, pretty basic ego skill, not really much I need to go over on it. So of course we've got blessing when shield in possession is lower than 30% of max health. If this card moves from hand to graveyard, 60% shield, and gaining a ton of shield and survivability with that blessing effect. And then shield retention, like we just said, this is shield retain. You're gonna retain a shield equal to the current amount at the end of the turn. But yeah, that's her ego skill and her new effects. Then moving on to her potentials. Okay, so her basic cards actually do not have blessing on them, at base kit, but once you unlock this potential, it'll add blessing to those basic cards. Then as for the nodes that lead up to the major nodes, she's gonna have health and defense. She's gonna be a vanguard. Kind of makes sense for her to have health and defense on these nodes. And then her unique potential, if Adelheid's defense is greater than 300 plus 5% void attribute damage amount, for every 10 defense exceeding 300, add an additional 2% to the modifier, additional plus 10% max. That's gonna max out at 350 defense for a total of plus 15% void attribute damage amount for Adelheid. Then onto her other basic potential, plus 5% shield gain amount to Adelheid's fairy protection. Adelheid's defense is greater than 250, add an additional plus 5% to the modifier. So yeah, not really important because we're probably gonna be removing her basics. They're not really that valuable, but yeah. And then moving on to her manifest egos. So her E1 for the Guardian of Secrets card, that's the card that can't get an epiphany, but it has the shield retention one. It'll decrease the cost by 1 and add plus 100% shield gain amount, which is additive. So I think it goes from like 240 to 340, but yeah, plus 100% shield amount and saving you 1 AP. Nothing too insane, but it's alright. E2 gains the Bliss of Dreams effect for each blessing Adelheid applies or creates. At the start of the battle, gain the Bliss of Dreams effect for each blessing card in possession, and basically what Bliss of Dreams does, increase damage amount of allies by 3%, max 10 stacks, so that goes up 30%. This is multiplicative, so that is a 30% multiplicative buff. That's going to be really nice for units that really want multiplicative, such as like Kairon. But yeah, this E2 is pretty nice for support. And then moving on to her E3 plus 200% shield gain amount to the Happy Ending, that's her ego skill, and then changes the restriction of the fixed healed equal to shield in possession effects to does not exceed 50% of max HP. So originally it was 30% of max HP and now it's 50. But yeah, just more survivability, nothing too insane. And then onto her E4, which sounds pretty decent. At the start of the battle, apply blessing to any number of cards in hand. When a blessing upgrade card is used, apply blessing to one random card in draw pile. So this is gonna apply blessing to every single card you have in your hand at the start of the battle. It's at the start of the battle, not the start of the turn. So it's just one time, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it's nice to get the ball going and rolling. So you can start using those blessing cards straight away. And then we skip the E5, it's throwaway, not really important. Then moving on to her E6, for Bliss of Dreams, decrease max stacks by 5 and change the increased damage amount effect to 8%. And then at the start of the turn, if Bliss of Dreams is 5, draw 1 blessing card. So originally this was 10 stacks at 3% for 30%, but now it's 5 at 8%, so that's 40%. So it's 10% more and it ramps up faster. But also at the start of the turn, you're going to be able to draw a blessing card if you have max Bliss of Dream stacks. So there's some passive value there for us to draw at the start of every turn. I think Adelheid is going to be perfectly fine at E0. None of her egos scream like really power creep or insane, so I would just probably get E0 and call it a day. Unless Adelheid is just your favorite character, then you can go like E6, E4, whatever you want. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. Then moving on to the team compositions we have that the devs displayed for us on the dev live stream. They want us to run Adelheid with Hyde and Marie and Nia. Also want us to run Adelheid with Yuki and Nia. They actually were showcasing Yuki with Adelheid in the dev live stream, and there definitely is some synergy there. You can like proc the inspiration effect on Yuki a ton of times with Adelheid's cards. But this third team composition, Adelheid, Maribel, and Narja, that one seems very interesting. Seems like a lot of sustain and support there. Pretty sure you can just get counterattack on Maribel and maybe do some damage with Adelheid's creation cards while keeping all of the sustain, gonna be shielding with Maribel and Adelheid, and then got the healing from Narja with her mealtime. And then the second team is just Adelheid, Diana, and Mika. But yeah, those are some of the team compositions that they recommend for Adelheid. Moving on to Adelheid's partner, her name is Clara. So basically what Clara does, increase the assigned combat's defense by 16%. When a card with the blessing effect applied by the assigned combat is used, a fixed heal 40%, 5 times per turn. So that goes up to 200% fixed heal. If you're pulling Adelheid's partner, this is going to be another way to heal outside of her ego skill, because I'm pretty sure her ego skill is like the only way she can heal. But yeah, it's fixed heal, so you know, it's not going to be much, but you know, better than nothing. And then when the Sign Combat's blessing card is used, allies gain 1 prism, max 4 stacks. Prism is a new buff. Basically what it does, increase damage amount of attack cards and shield gain amount of skill cards by 5%. So that goes up to 20%. I definitely see a lot of value in this partner, just like Tiana for Typhera. You know, it's going to be a nice support partner for the entire team, you know, buffing the ally damage. But yeah, Claire's ego skill, Genius Stage Director. It's going to cost 3 ego points, 200% shield. Select and draw 2 blessing cards from draw pile. So that's actually pretty good. Any ego skill that draws for, you know, pretty low ego points, in this case is going to be 3. That's going to be pretty good. Now the cards do have to have blessing on them, so it does need a prerequisite. It's not just a straight up draw 2, but with how easy you can apply blessing on cards, I don't think it will be that big of a problem. That is the partner for Adelheid named Clara. Everything you need to know about her basically. But yeah, that's going to be the end of this video. I think I kind of like went over everything you need to know for Adelheid, and you know, her basics, her partners, epiphanies, potentials, ego manifestations. This video was informative. I'd very much appreciate if you could support the channel, like, comment, subscribe. You know, it all means a ton to me, and I appreciate every one of you who shows love to the channel. Let me know what you guys' thoughts on Adelheid is so far. I think, you know, she looks like pretty decent. I don't think she's like anything insane. You know, we have other substitutes such as Magna, Calipe, even 9 with Ironclad. So, you know, I don't think like Adelheid is like super insane, but I definitely do think she's going to be like a really solid shielder, if not the best shielder in the game. But you know, this game is kind of like pretty easy, so you don't necessarily like need the best units. Like everything in this game is pretty much beatable with every single unit. Calipe, Magna, 9, you can use all of those and clear everything basically. I definitely will be pulling Adelheid. I pull every single new unit to make content for you guys. That's going to be the end of this video. I hope you guys take care, peace, and be safe until the next one.